Bismillah, assalamu alaikum. Okay, so basically what we're going to be discussing today are the various types of paints to use. There are tons and tons of paints, depending on the surface and the application that we're going to be, well, actually the application is airbrushing, but depending on the surface that we're going to be using the paint on will determine what paint we will be using. As for now, we're doing textiles, meaning non-porous fabric type material, not exclusively t-shirt material, but you'll do all types of material that's that is a porous material. Okay, the hard surfaces, that's a different animal. Takes a different type of learning path, let's say, for the hard surfaces. But for right now, we're going to be working with textile paint. The good thing with a lot of the textile paints, you can use it on hard surfaces periodically in certain situations. Definitely wouldn't do automotive with the with some of these paints. I've had my experience with them. For example, with this Jacquard, this is an amazing paint. I love this paint. The thing I like about this paint is that it's like thinned down perfectly. It's ready to spray. You don't really have to dilute it much. It's ready to go. It claims to be multi-surface. Okay. But no. I've done automotive parts with this and primed it, prepped it properly, everything. But when I got really close to the surface while I was airbrushing it, the air got beneath the paint and lifted it up and bubbled it up on that hard surface that was perfectly primed, perfectly prepped. It just couldn't withstand the pressure of, and it wasn't a lot of, I don't spray with a lot of pressure. It's only 45 pounds of pressure that I'm using. But it couldn't withstand that on a hard surface. So I wouldn't recommend this for hard surfaces as far as automotive is concerned. Now, if you're doing something like drywall, or you're painting on a regular wall, you're painting on brick, or you're painting stuff like that, I think this will work pretty good. I've actually used it on regular walls. It works really, really good. I just wouldn't recommend it for automotive. Acrylic, these are basically all the paints that are used for textiles. And this one I use for leather mainly, but this can be used also for textiles if push comes to shove. I just, the fact that it says keep out of reach of children kind of makes me want to just put that one to the side and not use it as often. Because if it has that, obviously there's some stuff in there that you don't want to be messing with. My favorite, by far, go-to paint is Createx. It used to be wicked. It used to be wicked. I'm going to tell you why I'm not going with wicked right now, and I'm going with Createx now as opposed to wicked. The reason I left wicked is because, wicked bought Createx or vice versa. I don't know which one it was. However, they did something with the chemistry on here. This paint used to be amazing, but I found that, and I want to date this so we know what date it is. This is 2025, January 11th, 2025. So I'm dating this. Hopefully in the future they fix it. But as of recently, they did something with the chemistry in this product that causes it to, I would say, ferment and clump up after a while. And it's such a headache because you're constantly getting clogs in your airbrush and it's spitting out gumps and you definitely don't want to deal with that when you're flying and you're in your zone and you're painting. You don't want to deal with that. So sadly, and I say this emphatically, sadly, I had to step away from wicked. Okay, and as far for hard surfaces, I use a different type of paint. For walls, I use a different type of paint, which we would get into when we get into the walls later. But for textiles, they still have, I heard they're going to be discontinuing this brand also. But for now, I'm using Createx. The actual Createx, not the Createx Wicked line, but the actual Createx itself. I love this stuff. This stuff, as far as apparel, t-shirts, textiles, this thing has always came through. Has always been amazing. Their fluorescents are phenomenal. So yeah, and I use this. I use the fluorescence also on walls as well. I mean, it's amazing. Just want to clear coat it when you're done with it, so it just gives it a little added more strength. And you know what? That was what they did with this formulation here on Wicked. They put a hardener in it that made it super strong. I think it was like a urethane hardener, and it was great when it worked. It was amazing when it worked because it was super strong. When it was on the surface, it was on the surface. You didn't want to get the stuff on your hands because it was hard to wash off. And I loved it. The problem is that with longevity in time, it just started clumping up. It wasn't something that I could rely on. That was I could rely that I could rely on it clumping up, but I couldn't rely on its performance. And sadly, I hope they fix that again. This is 2025. I hope they fix it this year. I really want to go back to them, but for right now, we're going to be using a combination of Createx and Jacquard. The problem with Createx is that I have to dilute it with water. This is not dish detergent. This is water. I took the dish detergent out of it and replaced it with water. I like using this because it has this spout on it, which allows me to go inside the bottles really easily to fill it up with water. And that's what I do. I thin it down some. So I had to do that with this black paint, which was, I believe, also Createx. Works great, but sometimes you got to thin it down. So I thinned it down, and I was able to get the consistency and the viscosity that I wanted to be able to achieve these lines, which we're going to be going through in the next lesson. Okay, so just a heads up on the paints that I use. You may have to water down the paint depending on the paint that you're going with. There's tons of paints out there. I'm not telling you to stick to any one particular paint. If it's for textile, 9 times out of 10 it should be good. But these are the paints that I prefer to use. Mainly these two right here for textiles. And again, you're gonna have to thin it down a little bit with water. You're gonna have to have some consistency. You want to thin it down till you get that right flow. Okay, once it's coming out of your gun consistently and nice, then keep track of that. Keep track of how much you're thinning it down. So when you have to do it again, you know how much to thin it down next time. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next lesson, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.